Eve here from Vitamin Eve Nutrition Counseling. I love helping people have peace with food in any situation, no matter what is happening in their lives. So today what we're talking about is how to deal with the sadness that might come up when the end of the meal has arrived. So I'm sure you've experienced it, times where you're feeling sadness because the meal is over. I call it grief at the end of the meal. And oftentimes, feeling that sadness could be really troublesome. Feeling that grief could be really troublesome, especially when you don't know what's happening, because when you're feeling that sense of sadness, it actually might make you eat more to deal with that sadness. So it becomes very important to learn how to handle, learn how to navigate that grief at the end of the meal that might show up. I've never read about this anywhere else. I never heard about this anywhere else. So I'm very excited to share this tip with you because it certainly helped me in my life. And I've seen this also work for several of my clients, is knowing how to handle and how to navigate that grief that naturally shows up at the end of the meal. This grief at the end of the meal may also show up if you're eating with others and you're feeling full, but they're still eating. Oftentimes that could also bring up feelings of sadness and grief. This could also show up if you have any type of food allergy and there are certain foods that you need to avoid for health reasons. It could also bring up a sense of grief when you tell yourself no, that you're not going to eat that food. This sense of grief could surprisingly also show up when you don't even want to eat that food. So for instance, if you've already had some ice cream and you're feeling perfectly full and somebody offers you cookies, it could be hard to say no, just because saying no to yourself could be a challenge. It could also bring up feelings of sadness and grief. So I want to share with you 3 really powerful tools to help you navigate the sense of sadness that could come up at the end of the meal, or that could come up when we tell ourselves that we're not going to eat something for health reasons, or even if we don't even want to eat that thing. So here's what to do. Tip number 1, and I feel this first tip is actually my favorite tip. It's the most powerful one, I think. And the way to handle this sense of grief is simply to acknowledge that it's there. Oftentimes, just letting yourself acknowledge that, oh, I'm feeling grief, and allowing yourself to feel it is enough to address the issue. So if you feel that sadness coming up, just allowing yourself to be filled with that sadness, allow it to move through your body. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to say anything, just allowing it to be there and allowing it to move through your body is enough to navigate that feeling of grief or that sense of sadness that could show up once the meal is over. Tip number 2 is you could do something to punctuate the end of the meal. I call it sealing the deal. So oftentimes for people, the way that they may choose to seal the deal at the end of their food is to make that last perfect bite. I'm sure you've even seen somebody do this. Maybe you've even done this yourself. So that's a great way to punctuate that this is the end of the meal. Another thing you could do to help punctuate the end of the meal is perhaps have a mint or have a cup of tea. Some people like to chew gum. Chewing gum is a little bit iffy because sometimes that could actually perpetuate the oral fixation. So I'm going to leave that up to you whether or not that is a good choice for you. As with most of my tools, I usually recommend experimentation to see what works best for you. After all, learning how to eat is a very personal activity, and learning how to attune to yourself and finding out what tools work best for you is such a beautiful gift you're giving yourself, and only you could do this for yourself. So I really acknowledge you for watching my videos and experimenting with these tools. So the third tool I want to give you is actually planning a next activity. So once your meal is over, know exactly what you're going to do right after the meal is finished, so it's easier to get up from the meal. I strongly recommend the activity be something pleasant, something you really enjoy. So you've probably seen people do this, like after they finish their meal, they might sit down and read a chapter of a book. That's wonderful. Maybe watching an episode of your favorite TV show, calling a friend, sketching something, or engaging in some art. I had a client, she was super creative. I loved working with her. And the grief that showed up for her at the end of the meal was super strong. And so something that she did to help her move on from the meal is she'd actually play a song on her phone and dance to it. She would actually dance, and that would help her feel her grief and move on from it so she could move on with her life. So I hope you found these tips helpful. Again, feeling grief at the end of the meal, or feeling grief when you tell yourself you're not going to eat something, whether or not you actually want that thing, could bring up sense of sadness or a sense of grief for many people. And so my 3 favorite tools to help you navigate that grief is, first of all, allow it to be there, acknowledge it. Oftentimes this is enough to help you move on. Another great tool is to do something to punctuate the end of the meal, either with a piece of mint, an herbal tea, making that perfect bite. And the third tool to help you navigate that grief that could show up at the end of the meal is to plan a pleasant activity once the meal is over. So again, anything like reading a book, playing your favorite song and dancing could be wonderful. Anyway, I hope you found this message helpful. I really hope it helps you. I know it certainly has helped me and several of my other clients. And if you're interested in staying in touch and keeping up with tools like this, I invite you to subscribe to this page. You could press that bell and let you know when the next video is available. Or if you want additional tips to help you stop eating, I have a free ebook on my website. It's called Stop Overeating Now. There's a link in the description below. And if you want more personalized support, I invite you to schedule a complimentary food freedom call with me. And again, the link to that is on the description below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.